The thunder of hooves echoed through the canyon as Olivia Wilson raced toward the swollen river, her heart pounding harder than her horse's galloping stride. Blood trickled down her temple, and her tattered blue dress clung to her trembling body as she pushed her exhausted mare forward. Behind her, distant shouts and gunfire pierced the twilight air of the Arizona Territory, 1873. She had less than a minute before they'd be upon her, the men who had turned her life into a nightmare. "Just a little further, Penny," she whispered to her horse, patting the chestnut mare's neck. "Please, just a little further." The river appeared before her, a churning mass of water swollen from spring rains, its violent currents carrying branches and debris downstream. Olivia hesitated only briefly at the bank. The water roared, promising danger, but behind her waited certain death or worse. With no choice left, she urged Penny forward into the rushing water. The current hit them with unexpected force. Penny neighed in panic as her hooves lost purchase on the riverbed. Olivia clung desperately to the saddle as cold water soaked through her clothes, but a powerful surge tore her from her mount. She screamed as she was pulled under, the world becoming a chaotic blur of brown water and desperate gasping breaths whenever she managed to break the surface. "Help!" she cried out, though she knew no one could hear over the roar of the water. Her lungs burned, limbs growing heavy as the current swept her downstream. Just as blackness began creeping into the edges of her vision, something caught her arm, strong fingers gripping her wrist with iron determination. With a powerful heave, she felt herself being dragged toward the riverbank. Through water-blurred vision, she made out the silhouette of a man against the fading daylight, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. As he pulled her onto solid ground, Olivia collapsed, coughing up river water, her entire body shaking with cold and exhaustion. "Easy now," a deep voice murmured as strong hands gently turned her to her side. "You're safe, madam." When Olivia finally caught her breath and looked up, she found herself staring into the most intense blue eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a man kneeling beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind, yet strikingly handsome. His dark blonde hair curled slightly at his collar, and a few days' worth of stubble shadowed his strong jaw. "Who?" she managed before another coughing fit overtook her. "Name's Vaughn Langston," he said, draping his coat around her shivering shoulders. "You picked one hell of a day for a swim, miss." Olivia tried to stand but fell back, her legs refusing to support her. Distant shouts from across the river caused her to flinch and shrink against the stranger. Vaughn's expression darkened as he glanced toward the sounds. "Those men after you?" She nodded weakly, clutching his coat tighter around herself. "Please," she whispered, "they'll kill me if they find me." Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. "Then we best make sure they don't," he said, carrying her to a dappled gray stallion waiting nearby. With careful movements, he settled her in the saddle before mounting behind her. His arms formed a protective cage around her as he took the reins. "I promise you this," he said, his voice low and fierce in her ear as they rode away from the river. "You'll never be caught again. Not while I draw breath." As they disappeared into the gathering darkness, Olivia leaned back against his chest, too exhausted to question why this stranger would risk himself for her. For the first time in months, despite the danger still pursuing them, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The distant lights of a small settlement appeared on the horizon as Vaughn guided his horse through the darkness. Olivia had drifted in and out of consciousness during their ride, the rhythm of the horse's movements and the warmth of Vaughn's body behind her lulling her despite her fear. "Miss." His voice was gentle as he roused her. "We're approaching Winslow. It's not much, but there's a doctor who can tend to that cut on your head." Olivia stiffened, panic rising in her chest. "No, please. They'll look for me in town. They have men everywhere." She felt rather than saw Vaughn nod. "All right. I've got a place about 3 miles outside of town. It's not fancy, but it's safe. No one will find you there." Relief washed over her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still raw from swallowing river water. They bypassed the main streets of Winslow, staying to the outskirts where shadows concealed their passage. The town was small but growing rapidly since the railroad had come through the previous year. Even at this hour, lights spilled from the saloon, and occasional laughter pierced the night. Eventually, they turned onto a narrow trail that wound through junipers and pinyon pines. After what seemed like an eternity to Olivia's aching body, a small ranch house came into view, nestled against a backdrop of red rock formations. A barn stood nearby, and a corral held several horses that nickered softly as they approached. Vaughn dismounted first, then carefully helped Olivia down. Her legs buckled immediately, and he caught her, lifting her once again into his arms without comment. He carried her to the house and somehow managed to open the door while still holding her. The interior was simple, but clean: a main room with a stone fireplace, wooden table, and a few chairs, with 2 doorways leading to what she presumed were bedrooms. He set her gently in a chair near the cold hearth. "I'll get a fire going," he said, moving with efficiency to stack kindling and logs in the fireplace. "Then we'll see about some dry clothes and that wound." As he worked, Olivia studied him more carefully. His movements were precise, economical, a man accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. His clothes, though dusty from the trail, were of good quality. Not a common ranch hand then, she thought. "Are you a lawman?" she asked suddenly. He glanced over his shoulder, a small smile touching his lips. "Used to be Texas Ranger for 8 years. Came out here looking for something quieter." The fire caught, and he straightened. "Seems quiet found me, but you didn't." He moved to a chest in the corner and pulled out what appeared to be a shirt and trousers. "These'll be too big, but they're dry. Bedroom's through there." He nodded toward one of the doorways. "I'll heat some water for washing up." Olivia clutched the clothes he handed her. "Why are you helping me? You don't know anything about me." Vaughn's expression grew serious. "I know enough. I know you were willing to risk drowning rather than be caught by those men. That tells me all I need to know for tonight." He moved toward the kitchen area. "Tomorrow's soon enough for questions." In the small bedroom, Olivia changed quickly, her fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar buttons of the shirt that hung almost to her knees. The trousers were impossible without a belt, so she abandoned them, the long shirt serving as a nightdress. She caught a glimpse of herself in a small mirror hung on the wall and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her auburn hair hung in wet tangles around a face too pale and thin, with dark circles under her green eyes. The cut at her temple had stopped bleeding but looked angry and red. When she emerged, Vaughn had a pot of water heating on the cook stove and was laying out bandages and a bottle of whiskey on the table. He looked up when she entered, his expression carefully neutral as he took in her appearance. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. He poured a cup of coffee and placed it before her, then added a generous splash of whiskey. "Drink. It'll warm you up." She obeyed, the burn of alcohol cutting through the lingering chill in her bones. As she sipped, he dipped a clean cloth in the warm water and gently began cleaning the mud and blood from her face. His touch was surprisingly tender for such large hands. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low. She hesitated only briefly. "Olivia Wilson." "How long have they been chasing you, Olivia Wilson?" 3 days, she whispered. "But it feels like forever." He nodded as if this confirmed something for him. "The cut's not too deep, won't need stitching." He dampened the cloth with whiskey. "This will sting." She hissed as the alcohol burned the open wound but didn't pull away. He worked methodically, cleaning and then bandaging her temple with gentle efficiency. "Thank you," she said when he finished. "I don't know how to repay you. No need." He moved away, putting the medical supplies back in a wooden box. "You hungry?" Only then did Olivia realize she was famished. She nodded eagerly, and he set about preparing a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits left from that morning. As he worked, an awkward silence fell between them. "How did you come to be in the river?" he finally asked, his back to her as he tended the stove. Olivia stared into her coffee cup. "I was trying to lose my trail. My horse. Did she make it? I lost her in the current." "Didn't see another horse when I pulled you out," Vaughn said gently. River was running hard, might have carried her downstream. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. Poor Penny. She was a good horse. "We can look for her tomorrow," he offered, though his tone suggested he didn't hold much hope. When he placed a plate of food before her, Olivia ate ravenously, only realizing halfway through how unladylike she must appear. She slowed, embarrassed. "Don't stop on my account," Vaughn said with a slight smile. "Been a while since I've seen someone enjoy my cooking that much." "It's wonderful," she said truthfully. After days of running with barely any food, the simple meal tasted like a feast. As they ate, Vaughn kept the conversation light, not pressing her for details about her pursuers. He told her instead about his ranch, the small herd of cattle he kept, his horses, the improvements he was making to the house. His voice was deep and soothing, and despite her fear and exhaustion, Olivia found herself relaxing. "You should get some sleep," he said when she began to nod off at the table. "Take my bed. I'll bunk out here." "I couldn't," she began to protest, but he cut her off. "You need rest more than I do, and I sleep light. If anyone comes nosing around, I'll hear them." Too exhausted to argue, Olivia retreated to his bedroom. The sheets smelled of soap and something distinctly masculine that she found oddly comforting. As she slipped beneath the blankets, she heard Vaughn moving around the main room, checking doors and windows. "Mr. Langston." She called softly. He appeared in the doorway, a shadow against the firelight behind him. "Just Vaughn." "Did you mean it? What you said by the river?" "About keeping you from being caught," he nodded, his expression solemn. "I meant every word. Now get some sleep, Olivia. You're safe here." As he closed the door, leaving it slightly ajar, Olivia realized she believed him. Despite knowing nothing about this man beyond his name and former profession, she trusted him. It made no logical sense, but as sleep claimed her, she surrendered to the feeling of security his promise had given her. Morning sunlight streaming through the window woke Olivia. For a moment, she lay disoriented, the unfamiliar room causing a spike of panic until memory returned. She was in Vaughn Langston's house. She was safe, at least for now. The smell of coffee and frying bacon drew her from the bed. She found Vaughn's comb on the dresser and did her best to tame her tangled hair before venturing out. Her dress had been hung near the fireplace to dry but was still damp in places. She remained in his oversized shirt, cinching it at the waist with a piece of cord she found. When she entered the main room, Vaughn was at the stove, his back to her. He had clearly been up for hours. His hair was damp from washing, and he wore a clean shirt tucked into worn denim trousers. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, and for a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes as he took in the sight of her in his shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. He quickly masked it, giving her a polite nod. "Morning. Coffee's hot if you want some." He gestured to a pot on the stove. "How's your head feeling?" Olivia touched the bandage at her temple. "Better, thank you." She poured herself coffee and sat at the table while he finished preparing breakfast. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, birds called to one another, and she could hear the distant lowing of cattle. The peaceful domesticity of the scene made the events of yesterday seem almost dreamlike. Vaughn set a plate of eggs and bacon before her, then took a seat across the table with his own breakfast. He ate in silence for a few moments before speaking. "I need to know who's after you, Olivia," he said finally, his voice gentle but firm. "If I'm going to keep you safe, I need to understand what we're facing." Olivia set down her fork, appetite suddenly diminished. She had known this moment would come, but facing it was harder than she'd anticipated. Would he still want to help her once he knew the truth? "My husband," she said softly, staring into her coffee cup. "Or rather, the man who claims to be my husband, Edgar Blackburn." Vaughn's expression remained neutral, but she saw a flicker of recognition at the name. "The cattle baron owns half the grazing land between here and Flagstaff," she nodded miserably. "We were married 8 months ago. He wasn't what he seemed." "How so?" Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "He presented himself as a gentleman, charming, educated. My father had died, leaving me with debts I couldn't pay. Edgar offered marriage and security. I thought I was fortunate." She fell silent, the memories washing over her. Vaughn waited patiently, not pushing. "The first time he hit me was 2 weeks after the wedding," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I dropped a teacup. He broke my wrist and locked me in our bedroom for 3 days." She looked up, meeting Vaughn's gaze directly. It only got worse from there. Vaughn's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue at her own pace. "I tried to leave once before, about 2 months ago. He caught me, said if I ever tried again, he'd kill me." She pushed up the sleeve of the shirt, revealing a burned scar on her forearm in the shape of a cattle brand. "He marked me like livestock to remind me who I belonged to." Vaughn cursed under his breath, his eyes darkening with anger. "This time I planned more carefully," she continued. "I took money from his safe money that was rightfully mine from my father's estate. I waited until he was away on business, but he returned early. His foreman caught me saddling my horse." She touched her temple. "This is from when he threw me against the stable wall. I managed to knock him down and get away, but Edgar sent his men after me." "How many men?" Vaughn asked, his voice controlled despite the fury evident in his eyes. "At least 6 were following me, but he has more ranch hands loyal to him, and he has connections. The local sheriff is his cousin." Vaughn nodded slowly, absorbing this information. "Edgar Blackburn is a powerful man in these parts, but he's not above the law." Olivia laughed bitterly. "In my experience, Mr. Langston, men like Edgar make the law work for them. Who would believe my word against his? To the world, he's a respected businessman. I'm just a hysterical woman who stole from her husband." "I believe you," Vaughn said simply. Those 3 words, spoken with such quiet conviction, nearly undid her. Tears welled in her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. "Thank you," she whispered, "but my belief won't keep you safe. Edgar won't stop looking for me, and now I've involved you in my problems." Vaughn stood, carrying his empty plate to the wash basin. "I've handled worse than Edgar Blackburn." He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we need to get word to the proper authorities, not the local sheriff, but someone higher up. I still have connections with the federal marshals. Second, we need proof of what Blackburn's done to you." "The only proof is my body," Olivia said softly. "And the wounds heal." "Then we document them," Vaughn said matter-of-factly. "There's a doctor in Winslow I trust. He can examine you, make official notes of your injuries, current and healed. That, combined with your testimony, might be enough. And in the meantime, Edgar has men searching everywhere." In the meantime, you stay here. This place is remote enough. Few people even know it exists." He paused, considering. "We'll need to be careful. No trips into town for you. I'll handle supplies and communications." Olivia studied him, trying to understand his motivation. Why would you take such a risk for a stranger? Vaughn was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had a different quality, harder, haunted. 8 years ago, my sister found herself in a situation similar to yours. Her husband was a respected banker in Austin. Behind closed doors, he was a monster. His hands gripped the edge of the counter. She tried to leave him 3 times. The third time he caught her. By the time I got there, he stopped, swallowing hard. I was too late. The law did nothing. Said it was a domestic matter. Understanding dawned. That's why you left the Rangers, he nodded. Couldn't serve a law that failed her so completely. His blue eyes met hers, fierce and determined. I couldn't save Abigail, but I can help you, Olivia, if you'll let me. In that moment, looking at this man who had already risked himself to save her once, Olivia made a decision. She stood, crossing to where he stood, and held out her hand. I accept your help, Vaughn Langston, and I promise I won't make you regret it. He took her hand in his much larger one, the touch sending an unexpected warmth through her. Then we have a deal, Olivia Wilson. Now let's figure out how to keep you alive and get you free. The next few days established a routine of sorts. Vaughn rose before dawn to tend to his livestock and check the perimeter of his property for any signs of intruders. Olivia, determined not to be a burden, took over household tasks, cooking, cleaning, and mending clothes that had been neglected by a bachelor more concerned with function than appearance. On the third morning, Vaughn returned from his chores to find fresh biscuits cooling on the table and Olivia humming softly as she swept the floor. She had found an old shirt in his dresser that she'd altered with neat stitches to fit her smaller frame better, cinched at the waist with a leather belt. "Smells good in here," he said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. Olivia looked up, a smile lighting her face. "I found flour and lard in the pantry. Hope you don't mind." "Mind, I haven't had home-baked anything since." He trailed off, a shadow crossing his features. "Since your sister," she guessed softly. He nodded, moving to the wash basin to clean up. Abigail was quite the baker. Used to say she could solve most problems with a good pie. She sounds wonderful. She was. He dried his hands on a towel, his expression distant for a moment before he visibly shook off the memories. "I'm heading into town today. Need to send some telegrams and pick up supplies." Olivia's expression tightened with worry. "Will it be safe? What if Edgar's men are there?" "They might be. But I need to make contact with Marshal Holden in Prescott, and we need medicine for that cut. It's healing, but we shouldn't risk infection out here." He pulled on his jacket. "Don't worry. I know how to blend in. Been doing it a long time." She handed him a biscuit wrapped in a cloth. "For the trail," she said. "Be careful, Vaughn." Their fingers brushed as he took the offering, and that now familiar warmth spread through her again. She'd noticed it happening more frequently, these moments of connection that seemed to linger. "I will," he promised. "Bar the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll be back by sundown." After he left, the house felt suddenly empty. Olivia kept busy, scrubbing floors and organizing the pantry, but her thoughts kept drifting to Vaughn. In just a few days, he had become her protector, her confidant, and something else she wasn't quite ready to name. As she worked, she considered her situation. Even if they managed to bring Edgar to justice, a prospect that still seemed remote, what would she do afterward? She had no home, no family, and very little money. The funds she'd taken from Edgar's safe would sustain her for a while, but not forever. The sound of approaching hoofbeats pulled her from these thoughts. Heart racing, she peered through the window, hoping to see Vaughn returning early. Instead, two unfamiliar riders were approaching the house. Men in dusty clothes with rifles slung across their saddles. Panic seized her. Had Edgar's men found her already? She grabbed the shotgun Vaughn had shown her how to use and positioned herself beside the door, trying to steady her breathing. The riders stopped in front of the house. "Hello, the house," called one of them. "Anybody home?" Olivia remained silent, praying they would assume the place was empty and move on. "Saw smoke from the chimney," the man continued. "Just looking for directions to Winslow. It could be innocent two travelers lost in the backcountry, or it could be a trap." Olivia's hands tightened on the shotgun. "Nobody home, I reckon," said the second man after a pause. "Let's check the barn. Might be someone there." Their footsteps crunched away from the door. Through the window, Olivia saw them heading toward the barn where Vaughn kept his horses. If they went inside, they'd know someone was living here. She had to make a decision quickly, setting down the shotgun. She mussed her hair and pinched her cheeks to bring color to them. Then she opened the door, affecting a casual demeanor she was far from feeling. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she called. The men turned, surprise evident on their faces. One was older, with a gray-streaked beard, while the other was younger, perhaps in his 30s, with a weather-beaten face. "Beg pardon, madam," said the older man, touching the brim of his hat. "Didn't mean to disturb you. We're trying to find the road to Winslow." "You're a fair piece off course," she said, keeping her distance. "Winslow's about 3 miles that way." She pointed east. "Follow the creek bed and you'll hit the main road." "Much obliged," said the younger man, his eyes roaming over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You out here all alone, madam?" "My husband just rode out to check the herd," she lied smoothly. "He'll be back any minute with our hands." The older man nodded, but the younger one's gaze lingered. "What's your husband's name? Maybe we know him." Olivia's heart pounded. "Langston," she said, using Vaughn's real name since they might check in town. "Vaughn Langston." "Don't believe I've heard of him," said the younger man. "New to these parts?" "A few years now," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "If you'll excuse me, I have bread in the oven." She retreated inside, closing the door firmly. Through the window, she watched the men confer briefly before mounting their horses. The older one started toward the east as she directed, but the younger one looked back at the house for a long moment before following. Olivia sank to the floor, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Had they been Edgar's men testing her, or just travelers, as they claimed? Either way, they now knew a woman was staying at Vaughn's ranch. Information that could reach the wrong ears. The hours until Vaughn's return crawled by in agonizing slowness. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. When she finally heard his horse approaching just as dusk was falling, she nearly wept with relief. She flung open the door before he had even dismounted. "Vaughn!" He was off his horse in an instant, his expression alarmed as he took in her distress. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "There were men here," she said, the words tumbling out. "2 riders. They said they were looking for directions to Winslow, but something felt wrong. The younger one kept looking at me strangely." Vaughn's expression darkened as he listened to her description of the encounter. "You did right to speak to them," he said when she finished. "Hiding might have made them more suspicious." He led his horse to the barn, Olivia following close behind. "You think they were Edgar's men?" she asked as he unsaddled the stallion. "Could be," he admitted. "Or could be exactly what they claimed. Either way, we need to be more cautious." He turned to her. "I spoke with the telegraph operator in Winslow. Marshal Holden will be in Flagstaff next week. He's a good man, one who won't be intimidated by Blackburn's money or connections." "A week seems so long," Olivia said softly. "I know." He rested a hand on her shoulder, the touch gentle but reassuring. But it's our best chance for resolving this legally. I also asked around town casually. Blackburn's men have been through Winslow asking questions, offering rewards for information about a red-haired woman. Fear clutched at her heart. Then they are looking for me. They are, but no one connects you to me or this place. He finished caring for his horse and led her back to the house. I brought something for you. From his saddlebag, he produced a small package wrapped in brown paper. Olivia unwrapped it to find a hairbrush, a small bottle of rose-scented hair oil, and a length of blue ribbon. Thought you might want something of your own, he said, almost shyly. Noticed you using my old comb. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. Thank you, she said, running her fingers over the brush's smooth handle. You didn't have to do that. Wanted to. He cleared his throat, suddenly businesslike again. Also got medicine for your cut, and some fabric the storekeeper's wife was selling. Thought maybe you could make something that fits better than my old shirts. Olivia examined the fabric, a practical cotton in a soft yellow color. It wasn't fine material, but it was clean and new, and the thought of having proper clothing again almost brought tears to her eyes. This is perfect, she said. I can start on it tonight. Over a dinner of stew and cornbread, Vaughn filled her in on what he'd learned in town. Blackburn's put out word that his wife has suffered some kind of breakdown, claims you're not in your right mind, took money from him and ran off. Olivia's grip tightened on her spoon. Of course he would say that, make me sound hysterical and unstable. It's a common tactic, Vaughn said grimly. But it has weaknesses. If you were truly unstable, why would he send armed men to hunt you down rather than a doctor to help you? Logic won't matter to those loyal to him, she pointed out. No, but it will matter to a federal marshal and a court of law. He pushed his empty plate aside. I also visited Dr. Thornton while I was in town, explained the situation without naming names. He's willing to examine you and document your injuries when it's safe to bring you in. The idea of being examined by a stranger made Olivia uncomfortable, but she understood the necessity. Will my word and a doctor's report be enough? Edgar will deny everything. Maybe not enough to put him in prison, Vaughn acknowledged, but enough to secure you a legal separation and protection. He hesitated. There's something else you should know. The divorce laws in Arizona Territory are more progressive than in many states. Cruelty is grounds for complete dissolution of marriage. Hope flickered in Olivia's heart. I could be free of him. Truly free, it's possible. Won't be easy, he'll fight it, but it's possible. Later, as Olivia sat by the fire working on cutting the fabric for a simple dress, she found herself studying Vaughn covertly. He was cleaning his revolver, his large hands moving with surprising deftness as he disassembled and oiled the weapon. In just a few days, this man had given her more hope and kindness than she'd experienced in the past year. Why did you become a Texas Ranger? She asked suddenly. He looked up, seeming surprised by the question. Family tradition, I suppose. My father was a ranger and his father before him. Seemed the natural path. Did you like it? His hand stilled on the gun. Sometimes. Like the idea of standing between the innocent and those who would harm them. Didn't always like what the job required. His eyes took on that distant look again. Saw too many good people hurt by bad laws and bad people protected by good ones. Is that why you left? Because of your sister? Partly. He resumed cleaning the revolver. After Abigail died, I tracked down her husband. Found him drunk in a saloon in San Antonio, bragging about how he disciplined his wayward wife. His jaw tightened. I wanted to kill him. Had my gun in my hand, but I couldn't do it not in cold blood. So I beat him within an inch of his life instead. Turned in my badge the next day. What happened to him? Abigail's husband, he lived, pressed charges against me, but the Rangers protected their own, called it a personal dispute. He moved east after that. Last I heard, he was in St. Louis. A muscle worked in Vaughn's jaw. Sometimes I wonder if he found another woman to torment. The pain in his voice resonated with something deep inside Olivia. Without thinking, she moved to sit beside him, placing her hand gently over his. "You did what you could," she said softly. "Just as you're doing for me now." His eyes met hers, blue and intense in the firelight. For a moment, something electric passed between them, an understanding, a connection that went beyond words. Then he carefully withdrew his hand, returning to his task. "We should both get some rest," he said, his voice gruffer than usual. "Tomorrow I need to check the north pasture, make sure those riders didn't disturb anything." Olivia nodded, returning to her sewing. But the warmth of his skin lingered on her palm, and she found herself wondering what it might be like to have those strong hands touch her with tenderness, rather than the cruelty she'd known from Edgar. The thought startled her. It was too soon to be thinking such things. She was still married, still in danger. And yet, as she glanced at Vaughn's profile silhouetted against the firelight, she couldn't deny that something was growing between them, something that both frightened and exhilarated her. Over the next 3 days, a comfortable rhythm developed between Olivia and Vaughn. During the day, he tended to ranch work while she managed the household tasks. In the evenings, they shared meals and conversation by the fire. Olivia finished her simple yellow dress and wore it with pride, feeling more herself than she had in months. On the 4th evening after the stranger's visit, a violent thunderstorm rolled in from the west. Rain lashed against the windows, and lightning split the sky in brilliant flashes. Vaughn had spent the day reinforcing the barn roof and came in soaked to the skin. "This will slow anyone looking for you," he commented as he hung his dripping coat by the door. "No one travels in weather like this." Olivia handed him a towel for his wet hair. "Small mercies, I suppose." "Are the animals secure?" "They're fine. Brought the horses into the barn." He rubbed the towel over his head, leaving his blonde hair standing in damp spikes. "Something smells good." "Rabbit stew," she said. "Found your snares with 2 caught this morning." His eyebrows rose in surprise. "You know how to dress game, my father taught me. He believed a woman should be self-sufficient." She stirred the pot hanging over the fire. "Edgar hated that I knew such unladylike skills, said it made me common." Vaughn snorted. "Man sounds like a fool as well as a brute." "Those are valuable skills." His casual acceptance warmed her. With Edgar, every action had been scrutinized, every word measured for propriety. With Vaughn, she could simply be herself. As they ate dinner, the storm intensified. Wind howled around the eaves and rain drummed on the roof with increasing ferocity. "Might be a long night," Vaughn observed. "This storm has the feel of settling in." A particularly loud thunderclap shook the house, causing Olivia to jump. She had never liked storms, a childhood fear she'd never quite outgrown. Vaughn noticed her reaction but said nothing, merely refilled her coffee cup. After dinner, they sat by the fire, the storm raging outside. Vaughn had produced a worn checkerboard, and they played several games, the simple activity providing a welcome distraction from both the weather and the uncertain future that awaited them. "You're quite good at this," Vaughn commented as Olivia captured another of his pieces. "My father again," she said with a small smile. "He said games of strategy built character. Smart man, he was." Her smile faded. "I miss him terribly. If he had lived, I never would have married Edgar." Vaughn studied her across the board. "How did your father die?" "Heart failure." "It was sudden. He seemed healthy one day, gone the next." She moved a checker piece. "He left debts I didn't know about. The bank took our house in Austin. I had nowhere to go, no family left. Her voice grew softer. When Edgar began courting me, offering security and what I thought was affection, it seemed like providence. You couldn't have known what he was, Vaughn said gently. Perhaps not. But I should have been more careful, should have asked more questions. She shook her head. I was so eager to believe someone wanted me that I ignored the signs. What signs? The way he spoke about his first wife said she was difficult, how he insisted on controlling all financial matters, his temper when small things went wrong. She looked up, meeting Vaughn's gaze. I thought marriage would soften those edges. Instead, it gave them free rein. A tremendous crack of thunder made her flinch again. Almost simultaneously, the wind slammed something against the side of the house with enough force to rattle the windows. Vaughn rose. I should check that. Might be a loose shutter. He took a lantern and his slicker, disappearing into the storm. Olivia moved to the window, trying to see through the curtain of rain, but the darkness was impenetrable. Long minutes passed, her worry growing with each one. When the door finally burst open, Vaughn staggered in, drenched despite the slicker. Part of the barn roof came loose, he said, water streaming from his clothes. Had to secure it before it took the whole roof with it. You're soaked through, Olivia exclaimed. You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death. He nodded, shivering now as the warmth of the house contrasted with his chilled body. Just need to dry off. But as he tried to remove his slicker, Olivia saw him wince, his right arm moving stiffly. You're hurt, she said, moving to help him. What happened? It's nothing. Beam caught my shoulder when it fell. Olivia helped him remove the slicker, then gasped at the spreading bloodstain on his shirt beneath. Vaughn, this isn't nothing. He glanced down, seeming surprised by the amount of blood. Didn't realize it broke the skin. Sit, she commanded, pushing him toward a chair. Let me look at it. For once, he didn't argue, allowing her to help him remove his sodden shirt. The gash on his shoulder was ugly but not deep, a long scrape where the beam had caught him. Still, it needed cleaning to prevent infection. Olivia worked efficiently, using the medical supplies he had purchased in town. Her fingers moved gently over his skin, cleaning the wound and applying a salve before bandaging it. She was acutely aware of his warmth, the solid muscle beneath her hands, the steady rhythm of his breathing. You're good at this, he said softly, watching her face as she worked. Another unladylike skill my father encouraged, she replied, securing the bandage. He said everyone should know basic medical care. Your father sounds like someone I would have liked to know. He would have liked you too. She finished with the bandage and stepped back. You need dry clothes, and probably a stiff drink. He smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. Wouldn't say no to either. While Vaughn changed in his bedroom, Olivia poured 2 measures of whiskey. The storm continued unabated outside, rain lashing the windows and wind moaning around the eaves. When he emerged in dry clothes, his hair still damp but combed back from his forehead, he accepted the whiskey gratefully. Thank you, he said, and she knew he meant for more than just the drink. They sat before the fire, the checkerboard forgotten. The storm had created an intimacy between them, a shared bubble of warmth and light amid the chaos of the elements outside. It reminded Olivia of the world beyond these walls, dangerous, unpredictable, waiting to reclaim her. What will happen after the marshal comes? She asked suddenly. If everything goes well, if I can secure a divorce from Edgar, what then? Vaughn swirled the amber liquid in his glass. That would be up to you. You'd be free to go wherever you want, do whatever you choose. I have nowhere to go, she admitted. No family, few friends. Edgar isolated me quite thoroughly. You could stay in Winslow, he suggested. It's a growing town. They need a school teacher. I heard the mayor discussing it in town. A school teacher. The idea appealed to her. I did teach briefly before my father died. You'd be good at it. His voice had a warmth to it that made her cheeks flush. Perhaps I will. She stared into the fire. It would be a new beginning. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the storm's persistent rage. When Olivia spoke again, her voice was barely audible above the rain. I'm afraid, Vaughn. He looked at her questioningly. Afraid that even if I get free of Edgar legally, I'll never truly be free of him. She wrapped her arms around herself. Afraid that what he did to me, what he made me feel, will always be there, like a shadow following me. Vaughn set down his glass and moved to sit beside her on the small sofa. Listen to me, Olivia. What happened to you was not your fault, and it does not define you. But it changed me, she whispered. I used to be different, braver, more trusting. Now I flinch at loud noises and startle when someone moves too quickly. Those reactions will fade with time, he said gently. You survived, Olivia. You planned, you acted, you escaped. That took extraordinary courage. She looked up at him, finding no pity in his eyes, only understanding and something deeper that made her breath catch. I couldn't have done it without you. You were already doing it when I found you, he reminded her. All I did was pull you from a river you were brave enough to enter. A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, making Olivia jump. Without thinking, she moved closer to Vaughn, seeking comfort in his solid presence. He hesitated for only a moment before placing his arm around her shoulders, careful of his injured one. The storm can't hurt you here, he said softly. It's not just the storm I fear, she confessed. It's everything it represents: chaos, danger, the unknown. I know. His voice was low, resonant against her ear where her head rested against his chest. But you're stronger than you know, Olivia Wilson. And whatever comes after all this, you'll face it with the same courage that brought you this far. She lifted her face to thank him and found his much closer than she'd realized. In the firelight, his eyes were midnight blue, intense and searching. For a breathless moment, neither of them moved. Then, with infinite gentleness, Vaughn brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his fingers lingering against her skin. Olivia's heart pounded as something electric passed between them. It would be so easy to close the distance, to seek comfort and connection in his kiss. But the rational part of her mind warned against it. She was still married, still in danger, still healing from wounds both visible and hidden. As if reading her thoughts, Vaughn slowly withdrew his hand, though his arm remained around her shoulders. We should get some rest, he said, his voice rougher than usual. Storm or no storm, dawn comes early. Olivia nodded, grateful for his understanding yet oddly disappointed. She rose from the sofa, suddenly aware of how intimate their position had been. Good night, Vaughn, she said softly. And thank you for everything. His smile was gentle. Good night, Olivia. In the small bedroom, listening to the storm gradually begin to subside, Olivia lay awake long into the night. Her thoughts turned not to Edgar or the dangers that still pursued her, but to the man sleeping in the next room, a man who had shown her more kindness and respect in a week than Edgar had in their entire marriage. For the first time since her escape, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival, a future that might include happiness, purpose, and perhaps even love. It was a dangerous thought, premature and fraught with complications. But as sleep finally claimed her, it was that thought, and the image of Vaughn's gentle smile that followed her into dreams. The storm passed during the night, leaving behind a washed, clean world glistening in the morning sunlight. Olivia woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Vaughn moving about in the main room. For a moment, She lay still, remembering the previous evening, the almost kiss, the comfort of his arm around her, the understanding in his eyes. When she emerged from the bedroom in her yellow dress, hair neatly braided with the blue ribbon he had given her, Vaughn looked up from the stove and momentarily froze, a peculiar expression crossing his face. "Good morning," she said, suddenly self-conscious under his intense gaze. He cleared his throat. "Morning, you look nice." The simple compliment shouldn't have made her heart flutter, but it did. "Thank you, how's your shoulder?" "Better." He poured her a cup of coffee. "Barn took more damage than I did. I'll need to spend most of the day repairing it." "I'll help," she offered. He raised an eyebrow. "You know carpentry too?" "Not really," she admitted with a smile. "But I can hand you tools and hold things steady. And I'd rather be useful than sitting alone in the house jumping at every sound." After a simple breakfast, they headed to the barn. The storm had torn off a section of the roof, allowing rain to soak the hay stored below. They worked together to move the wet hay outside to dry. Then Vaughn began the more complex task of repairing the roof structure. Olivia proved a capable assistant, anticipating his needs and learning quickly. As the morning progressed, she found herself relaxing into the physical labor, enjoying the sunshine on her face and the satisfaction of creating something useful with her hands. "Hand me that hammer, would you?" Vaughn called from where he was positioned on a ladder. As she passed it up to him, their fingers brushed, and that now familiar warmth spread through her. She watched him work, admiring the strength and precision in his movements despite his injured shoulder. "How did you learn to do all this?" she asked, holding a board steady as he nailed it into place. "Necessity," he replied. "When I bought this place, it was falling apart. Couldn't afford to hire help, so I taught myself. Made plenty of mistakes at first." "It's impressive," she said sincerely. "The whole ranch. You've built something real here." He paused, looking down at her. "Thank you. Sometimes I wonder if it was the right choice leaving law enforcement, coming out here alone." "Do you get lonely?" The question slipped out before she could consider its implications. Vaughn was silent for a long moment, hammering another nail before answering. "Sometimes, but I've always been comfortable with solitude." He glanced at her again. "Until recently, I hadn't realized what I was missing." The simple statement hung in the air between them, laden with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Olivia busied herself with organizing nails, hiding the flush that had risen to her cheeks. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, stopping only briefly for a lunch of cold biscuits and jerky. By late afternoon, the roof was repaired, and they had replaced the soaked hay with fresh bedding for the horses. As they walked back to the house, tired but satisfied with their day's work, Vaughn suddenly stopped, his hand going to the revolver at his hip. "What is it?" Olivia asked, alarm rising in her throat. He held up a hand for silence, his eyes scanning the trees surrounding the property. "Thought I saw movement near the edge of the woods," he said quietly. "Stay here." Before she could protest, he moved cautiously toward the tree line, his body tense and alert. Olivia watched, heart pounding as he disappeared among the pines. Long minutes passed, each one stretching her nerves tighter. When he finally emerged from the trees, his expression was grim. "Someone's been here," he said as he rejoined her. "Found tracks, at least 2 riders. They circled the property but didn't approach the house." Fear clutched at Olivia's heart. Edgar's men, can't say for certain, but they weren't just passing through. He guided her back to the house, his hand protective on her lower back. They were watching. Inside, Vaughn checked that all windows and doors were secure. "I don't think they'll try anything tonight," he said, drawing the curtains. "But we need to be prepared." "What if they come back with more men?" Olivia asked, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "Then we'll deal with them." He loaded his shotgun and placed it near the door. "Marshal Holden should be in Flagstaff tomorrow. With luck, I can reach him the day after." "And if we don't have luck?" The question hung heavy in the air. Vaughn crossed to where she stood and took her hands in his. "Listen to me, Olivia. I meant what I said by the river. You will not be caught again, not while I draw breath. If these men are working for Blackburn, they'll have to go through me to get to you." The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have reassured her. Instead, it triggered a new fear. "I can't let you risk your life for me," she said, squeezing his hands. "If anything happened to you because of me, that's my choice to make," he interrupted gently. "And I made it the moment I pulled you from that river." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, something shifted between them. The attraction, the connection that had been building day by day, suddenly crystallized into something undeniable. Without conscious thought, Olivia raised a hand to his cheek, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Vaughn went very still, his eyes darkening as he looked down at her. "Olivia," he said, her name a rough whisper. "I know," she murmured. "I know all the reasons why we shouldn't, but—" She struggled to find the words to express the tumult of emotions within her. "When I'm with you, I feel safe, not just protected, but seen. For the first time in so long, I feel like myself again." His hand came up to cover hers where it rested against his face. "You deserve so much more than I can offer," he said, his voice low and intense. "A man without a past, living on the edge of nowhere. What if that's exactly what I want?" She countered. "A new beginning, away from everything that came before." For a moment, she thought he would pull away, maintain the careful distance he had kept between them despite their growing closeness. Instead, his free hand came up to cup her cheek, mirroring her gesture. "Olivia," he said again, and this time her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. The kiss, when it came, was gentle, a question rather than a demand. His lips brushed hers with exquisite tenderness, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. Instead, she moved closer, her hands sliding up to his shoulders as she responded with all the emotion she had been holding back. What began as gentle exploration quickly deepened into something more urgent. Vaughn's arms wrapped around her, drawing her against him as if he could shield her from all harm through sheer proximity. Olivia felt herself melting into him, all thought suspended in the overwhelming sensation of finally being held with care rather than cruelty. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing unevenly. Vaughn rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if gathering himself. "I shouldn't have done that," he said, though his arms remained around her. "You're still married, still in danger. This complicates everything." "Perhaps some complications are worth having," she whispered, her fingers tracing the line of his collarbone where it was visible above his shirt. He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "You've been through so much. The last thing I want is to take advantage of your vulnerability." "Is that what you think this is?" she asked, leaning back to look into his eyes. "Gratitude, confusion. I know my own mind, Vaughn Langston, and my own heart." She took a deep breath. "I care for you not because you saved me, but because of who you are, the man who treats me with respect, who listens when I speak, who sees me as a person, not a possession." His expression softened. "I care for you too, Olivia, more than I should, given the circumstances." His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. "But there's so much standing between us and any kind of future." "Then we take one day at a time," she said simply. "Beginning with tomorrow when we face whatever comes together." He nodded slowly, reluctantly releasing her. "We should rest while we can. Tomorrow may bring challenges we can't foresee." Though part of her wished to remain in his embrace, Olivia knew he was right. The dangers surrounding them hadn't disappeared because of one kiss, however transformative it had felt. "Good night, Vaughn," she said softly, stepping back. His eyes held hers, filled with emotions too complex to name. "Good night, Olivia." In her small bedroom, Olivia touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the imprint of his kiss. Despite the uncertainty awaiting them, despite the men who might even now be planning to take her back to Edgar, she felt strangely at peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would face it with the knowledge that she had found something precious, something worth fighting for. Dawn broke clear and bright, the storm's aftermath leaving the world washed clean and glittering. Olivia woke early, dressing quickly in her yellow dress and moving to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. She found Vaughn already up, drinking coffee at the table, his expression thoughtful. "You're up early," she said, suddenly shy in the wake of the previous evening's intimacy. He glanced up, a small smile softening his features. "Couldn't sleep much, too many thoughts." "Regrets?" she asked quietly, pouring herself coffee. "No," he said firmly. "No regrets, just concerns about what today might bring." They ate breakfast in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Afterward, Vaughn outlined his plan. "I need to ride to Flagstaff to meet Marshal Holden," he said. "It's a full day's ride there and back. I don't like leaving you alone, but we need the law on our side." "I'll be fine," Olivia assured him, though the thought of being alone with potential watchers in the woods made her stomach clench with fear. Vaughn studied her face, reading her anxiety despite her brave words. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "Maybe you should come with me to Flagstaff." "But you said it was dangerous for me to be seen in town." "It is, but it might be more dangerous to leave you here alone." He ran a hand through his hair. "If those men were Blackburns, they could return with reinforcements while I'm gone." Olivia considered this. "If I go with you, we risk being seen together. That could put you in danger, too." "I can handle myself." His expression grew determined. "And I'd rather have you where I can protect you." The decision was made. They would ride together to Flagstaff, meeting Marshal Holden at the hotel where he was staying. Vaughn provided Olivia with a spare hat and a long coat to help disguise her appearance. They would take different routes into town, with Olivia entering the hotel from the back while Vaughn met the marshal in the front lobby. As they prepared to leave, Vaughn loaded extra ammunition for his revolver and rifle. "Stay close to me on the trail," he instructed. "If anything happens, anything at all, you ride hard for Flagstaff. Don't wait for me, don't look back." "I won't leave you," she protested. His eyes met hers, intense and unyielding. "Promise me, Olivia, your safety is what matters most." Reluctantly, she nodded. "I promise." "But the same goes for you. Don't take unnecessary risks for my sake." He didn't respond to that, which worried her more than if he had argued. They set out mid-morning, Olivia riding a gentle bay mare from Vaughn's small remuda while he rode his gray stallion. The day was pleasant, the storm washed air fragrant with pine and sage. Under different circumstances, it might have been an enjoyable ride through beautiful country. Instead, both remained vigilant, scanning the landscape constantly for signs of danger. They took a circuitous route, avoiding the main trail to Flagstaff in favor of less traveled paths through the forest and high desert. About halfway to their destination, they stopped to rest the horses in a small clearing beside a creek. As Olivia refilled their canteens, Vaughn suddenly tensed, his hand moving to his revolver. "What is it?" she whispered, freezing in place. "Not sure," he murmured. "Something doesn't feel right." The horses shifted nervously, sensing their riders' unease. Vaughn scanned the trees surrounding the clearing, his experienced eyes searching for any sign of danger. The shot came without warning, a sharp crack that sent birds scattering from nearby trees. Vaughn pushed Olivia to the ground, covering her body with his own as a bullet splintered bark from a tree inches from where they had been standing. "Stay down," he ordered, drawing his revolver and firing back in the direction of the shot. Olivia's heart pounded as she pressed herself against the earth. Another shot rang out, followed by Vaughn's return fire. Then silence fell, broken only by the nervous stamping of their horses. "We need to move," Vaughn said urgently, helping her to her feet. "Get to the horses." They ran crouching to where the animals were tethered. As Vaughn helped Olivia mount, another shot rang out, this one coming from a different direction. They were being flanked. "Ride," Vaughn commanded, slapping the bay's rump as he leaped onto his own mount. "Head east toward the ravine." They galloped from the clearing, bullets whizzing past them as they crashed through the underbrush. Olivia clung to her horse's mane, trusting the animal to follow Vaughn's stallion as they weaved between trees and boulders, putting distance between themselves and their attackers. The sound of pursuit followed them, hoofbeats and occasional shots fired more in frustration than accuracy as the distance increased. Vaughn led them into increasingly rough terrain, using his knowledge of the land to their advantage. Finally, they reached a steep-sided ravine with a narrow trail leading down one side. "This way," Vaughn called. "The trail's too narrow for them to follow side by side. We'll have the advantage if they come after us." They descended carefully, the horses picking their way down the treacherous path. At the bottom, a small stream gurgled between rock walls that rose 30 feet on either side. Vaughn dismounted, helping Olivia down. "Who were they?" she asked, her voice shaking despite her efforts to control it. "Hired guns from the look of them," Vaughn replied grimly. "Professional trackers, must have been following us since we left the ranch." "Edgar," she whispered. "He must have found out where I was." Vaughn checked his ammunition, his expression hard. "We need to keep moving. Flagstaff is still 10 miles south. If we can reach town, we'll have witnesses' safety in numbers. And if we can't," he met her eyes steadily, "then we fight." The simple declaration should have terrified her. Instead, Olivia felt a curious calm settle over her. She had spent too long being afraid, too long running. If this was where she made her stand, at least she would do it alongside a man she trusted, a man she was beginning to love. "Then we fight," she echoed, straightening her shoulders. A flicker of something like pride crossed Vaughn's face. He stepped closer, cupping her cheek briefly. "You are the bravest woman I've ever known, Olivia Wilson." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching riders echoed down from the top of the ravine. Vaughn immediately pushed Olivia behind a large boulder. "Stay hidden," he instructed. "I'm going to try to discourage them from following." He moved to position himself behind another boulder with a clear line of sight up the trail they had descended. As the first rider appeared at the top of the ravine, Vaughn fired a warning shot that kicked up dirt at the horse's feet. The animal reared in alarm, nearly unseating its rider. "That's far enough," Vaughn called out. "Next shot won't miss." There was a pause, then a voice called back. "We just want the woman. Hand her over and you can ride away." "Not going to happen," Vaughn returned. "You tell Blackburn his wife is under my protection now." A different voice responded, this one colder, more authoritative. "She's stolen property and money. This is a legal matter, not your concern, stranger." Olivia's blood ran cold at being referred to as stolen property. It confirmed everything she had told Vaughn about Edgar's view of her, not as a person, but as a possession. "I'm making it my concern," Vaughn shouted back. "And I've got plenty of ammunition and a good position. How many men are you willing to lose today?" Another pause, longer this time, followed by the sound of men conferring. Then the cold voice called again. "This isn't over. Tell Olivia that Edgar wants what belongs to him and he always gets it in the end." The threat hung in the air as the sounds of the riders withdrawing echoed down the ravine. Vaughn remained in position, watching until they were truly gone before returning to Olivia's side. "They're pulling back," he said, "but they won't go far, probably waiting for us to emerge from the ravine." "What do we do?" Olivia asked, the momentary courage she had felt now flagging in the face of Edgar's explicit threat. Vaughn studied the ravine walls. "There's another way out, an old game trail about half a mile down. It's steep, but the horses can manage it. They won't expect us to go that way." They led the horses along the stream bed, keeping below the ravine's rim to avoid being spotted. As promised, they eventually came to a narrow trail that zigzagged up the opposite wall of the canyon. "I'll go first," Vaughn said. "If it's clear at the top, I'll signal. Then come up quickly but carefully." Olivia watched anxiously as he led his stallion up the precarious path. Each step seemed to dislodge small stones that clattered down the slope. If their pursuers were nearby, the noise might give them away. Finally, Vaughn reached the top, disappearing from view for heart-stopping moments before reappearing at the edge. He waved for her to follow, and Olivia began the ascent, leading the nervous bay up the unfamiliar trail. Halfway up, her foot slipped on loose shale, sending a cascade of stones down the ravine wall. The noise seemed deafening in the quiet canyon. She froze, listening for any sign that they had been discovered. "Keep moving," Vaughn called softly from above. "We're still clear." With renewed determination, Olivia continued the climb. When she finally reached the top, Vaughn pulled her into a brief, fierce embrace before helping her mount. "Flagstaff is southwest of here," he said, orienting himself. "We'll have to circle wide to avoid them, but we can still make it by nightfall." They rode hard for the next few hours, taking advantage of the rough terrain to hide their trail while making progress toward Flagstaff. By late afternoon, the distant buildings of the town were visible on the horizon. "We made it," Olivia said, relief flooding her voice. "Not quite yet," Vaughn cautioned. "We still need to get into town unseen. They might have men watching the main roads." As they approached the outskirts of Flagstaff, they dismounted, leading their horses through a patch of dense pine forest that came within a few hundred yards of the first buildings. Dusk was falling, providing additional cover as they slipped into town via a back alley behind the livery stable. The hotel where Marshal Holden was staying stood on the main street, a 3-story building with a wide porch and large windows illuminated against the gathering darkness. Getting there without being seen would be their final challenge. "Wait here with the horses," Vaughn instructed, leaving Olivia in the shadowed alley behind the livery. "I'll scout ahead, make sure the way is clear." He returned 15 minutes later, his expression grim. "There are men watching the hotel, 2 on the porch, another across the street. They match the description of the riders who attacked us." Olivia's heart sank. "So close," she whispered. "What do we do now?" Vaughn considered for a moment. "I need to get word to Holden. He's expecting me, but he doesn't know about the ambush or that you're with me. Could we send a message?" Olivia suggested. "Too risky if it's intercepted." He shook his head. "No, I need to get into that hotel myself." A determined look crossed his face. "And I think I know how." His plan was simple but dangerous. He would create a diversion at the far end of the street, something to draw the watchers away from their posts. While they were distracted, Olivia would slip into the hotel through the kitchen entrance at the rear. She would ask for Marshal Holden's room number and wait for Vaughn to join her. "What kind of diversion?" Olivia asked worriedly. "Nothing too dramatic," Vaughn assured her. "Just enough to draw their attention. When you see them move, count to 30, then make your way to the hotel. Don't run, that attracts attention. Walk naturally like you belong." The plan set, they separated. Vaughn disappeared into the growing darkness while Olivia remained hidden, watching the men stationed near the hotel. Minutes stretched like hours as she waited, her nerves stretched to breaking point. Then it happened, a series of small explosions at the far end of the street, followed by shouts and the flare of sudden flames. Some kind of firecracker or blasting powder, she guessed. Whatever Vaughn had used, it worked. The men watching the hotel immediately ran toward the commotion, along with most of the pedestrians still on the street. Olivia counted to 30, then stepped out of hiding. Keeping her head down, she walked briskly but not hurriedly toward the hotel. The few people she passed paid her no attention, their focus on the disturbance down the street. The hotel's kitchen entrance was unguarded. She slipped inside, finding herself in a busy kitchen where cooks and servers were too occupied with dinner preparations to notice one more person passing through. In the main lobby, she approached the desk clerk, a young man whose attention was also partially focused on the commotion outside. "I need to speak with Marshal Holden," she said quietly. "It's urgent." The clerk looked her over, taking in her dusty clothes and wind-blown hair. "The marshal isn't receiving visitors this evening, madam. Please," Olivia insisted. "Tell him it concerns Vaughn Langston. He's expecting him." At the mention of Vaughn's name, the clerk's demeanor changed. "The marshal did mention Mr. Langston," he admitted. "Room 212, top of the stairs." Olivia thanked him and hurried up the staircase before he could change his mind. Finding room 212, she knocked softly, her heart in her throat. The door opened to reveal a tall man with steel gray hair and a neatly trimmed mustache. He wore a vest over a white shirt, with a marshal's badge pinned to the breast pocket. "Can I help you, madam?" he asked, his voice courteous but cautious. "Marshal Holden." "I'm here on behalf of Vaughn Langston. My name is Olivia Wilson. We need your help." Recognition flashed in the marshal's eyes. "Mrs. Wilson, Vaughn mentioned you in his telegram." He stepped back, opening the door wider. "Please come in. Where is Vaughn?" "Creating a diversion," she explained as she entered the room. "Edgar Blackburn's men are watching the hotel. They ambushed us on the way here." Holden's expression darkened. "Blackburn. I know the name, powerful man with a reputation for getting his way." He gestured for her to sit. Vaughn's message was deliberately vague, said only that a woman needed protection from an abusive husband. "I take it that's you." "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "I escaped from Edgar a week ago. Vaughn saved my life when I nearly drowned trying to cross a river to evade Edgar's men." Before she could explain further, there was another knock at the door. Marshal Holden drew his revolver, motioning for Olivia to move away from the entrance. "Who is it?" he called. "Vaughn Langston," came the reply, bringing a wave of relief to Olivia. Holden opened the door and Vaughn entered quickly, closing it behind him. His clothes were dusty, and there was a small cut on his cheek that hadn't been there before. "Had to take the long way around," he explained, his eyes immediately seeking Olivia. "You made it safely." "Thanks to your diversion," she said. "What did you use?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Blasting powder from the mining supply store. Set off a small charge in an empty barrel. No damage done, but plenty of noise and smoke." Marshal Holden holstered his weapon. "Good to see you, Vaughn, though I wish it were under better circumstances." The two men shook hands. Mrs. Wilson was just beginning to explain her situation. For the next hour, Olivia recounted her story, her marriage to Edgar, the abuse she had suffered, her escape, and the pursuit that had followed. Vaughn added details about the ambush on the trail and the men watching the hotel. Marshal Holden listened carefully, taking occasional notes. "What you're describing is serious, Mrs. Wilson," he said when they finished. "Assault, unlawful imprisonment, attempted kidnapping, these are federal offenses." Will that be enough to protect her? Vaughn asked. Blackburn has influence, money. The law is the law, Holden said firmly, and I enforce it without regard to a man's wealth or position. He turned to Olivia. I'll need to see those injuries you mentioned, the brand, the other scars, and we'll need Dr. Madison to examine you, make an official record. Olivia nodded, though the thought of being examined made her uncomfortable. Whatever is necessary. What about tonight? Vaughn asked. Blackburn's men know we're in town. They could try to take her. She'll stay here, Holden decided. I'll arrange another room under a different name. Post a deputy outside her door. Tomorrow, we'll get the doctor's examination done, then take her statement officially. Relief washed over Olivia. For the first time since her escape, she felt the full weight of the law on her side. With Marshal Holden's protection, there was a real chance she could be free of Edgar permanently. As if reading her thoughts, the marshal added, I should warn you, Mrs. Wilson, this won't be easy. Men like Blackburn don't surrender their property without a fight. There will be legal challenges, possibly physical threats. Are you prepared for that? I am, she said firmly. I'd rather die than go back to him. Holden nodded, respect evident in his expression. Then we'll do everything in our power to ensure it doesn't come to that. He glanced at Vaughn. You should both get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. After Marshal Holden left to arrange for Olivia's room, she found herself alone with Vaughn for the first time since the ambush. The events of the day, the gunfire, the chase, the fear and exhilaration seemed to have created a new intimacy between them, a bond forged in shared danger. Are you all right? Vaughn asked softly, his eyes searching her face. Truly, she nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by emotion. Thanks to you. Again, she stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. You risked your life for me today. And I'd do it again, he said simply. His hand came up to cover hers. Olivia, whatever he had been about to say was interrupted by Marshal Holden's return. Rooms arranged, he announced. Deputy Barnes will be outside your door all night, Mrs. Wilson. As they followed Holden down the hall to her new room, Olivia found herself wondering what Vaughn had been about to tell her. The intensity in his eyes had suggested something important, something perhaps too personal to say in front of the marshal. At the door to her room, Holden introduced Deputy Barnes, a serious young man who nodded respectfully to Olivia. No one gets in without the marshal's or my authorization, he assured her. Thank you, she said, genuine gratitude in her voice. Vaughn's room was further down the hall. As they prepared to separate for the night, he took her hand briefly. Try to rest, he said, his voice low. You're safe now. So are you, she reminded him. No more heroics, remember. A small smile touched his lips. I'll do my best. As Olivia closed her door, she realized how quickly Vaughn Langston had become essential to her sense of security, not just because of his protection, but because of who he was. Strong yet gentle, fierce yet kind. A man who had shown her that not all men used their strength to dominate or hurt. For the first time since her escape, she slept without dreams of pursuit or capture. Instead, she dreamed of blue eyes and gentle hands, of a future where fear was just a distant memory. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Dr. Madison, a kind-faced elderly physician, arrived early to examine Olivia. The examination was thorough but conducted with sensitivity and respect. The doctor documented each scar, each healed bone, each mark Edgar had left on her body, his expression growing increasingly grim as the evidence of abuse mounted. In 30 years of practice, he said as he finished his notes, I've seen the results of accidents, fights, and warfare. What was done to you, Mrs. Wilson, was none of these. It was calculated cruelty. He closed his medical bag with a decisive snap. My testimony will support your case fully. Afterward, Marshal Holden took her official statement, recording every detail of her marriage and escape. Vaughn was present, sitting quietly in the corner of the marshal's temporary office, his presence giving her strength as she recounted the most painful memories. "That's enough for now," Holden said finally, setting down his pen. "Mrs. Wilson, based on what you've told me and the doctor's examination, I have more than sufficient grounds to issue an arrest warrant for Edgar Blackburn." Hope surged within Olivia. "You can arrest him." "I can and will," the marshal confirmed. "The charges will be serious assault, battery, unlawful imprisonment to start, and I'll be recommending to the territorial court that your marriage be dissolved on grounds of extreme cruelty." "How long will that take?" Vaughn asked from his position by the window. "The legal process." "Months, possibly, but the protection of the law begins immediately." Holden looked at Olivia. "You'll need to remain under federal protection until Blackburn is in custody. After that, we'll need you to testify at his trial." The prospect of facing Edgar across a courtroom was terrifying, but Olivia nodded resolutely. "I'll do whatever is necessary." "Good." Holden gathered his papers. "I'm sending deputies to Blackburn's ranch today with the arrest warrant. With luck, this will be resolved quickly." But luck, it seemed, was not on their side. The deputies returned late that afternoon with troubling news. Edgar Blackburn had left his ranch 2 days earlier, reportedly on business to Prescott. The foreman claimed not to know when he would return. "He's avoiding arrest," Vaughn said grimly when Holden shared this information. "Probably knows we've gone to the law." "Most likely," the marshal agreed. "I've telegraphed the sheriff in Prescott to be on the lookout, but Blackburn has friends there too. He could be hiding anywhere in the territory. Or he could be closer than we think," Vaughn suggested, his expression darkening. "Those men watching the hotel yesterday, they were expecting us. Blackburn could be directing them from nearby." Holden considered this. "Possible. I'll have my deputies search the town discreetly." He turned to Olivia. "In the meantime, you should remain here. It's the safest place for now." As night fell, Olivia found herself restless in her hotel room. The events of the day reliving her abuse through testimony, the hope of Edgar's arrest followed by the disappointment of his evasion had left her emotionally drained yet unable to sleep. A soft knock at her door startled her. "Who is it?" she called cautiously. "Vaughn," came the quiet reply. She opened the door to find him standing there, Deputy Barnes visible at his post further down the hall. "May I come in?" Vaughn asked. "Just for a moment." Olivia stepped back, allowing him to enter. He closed the door behind him but remained near it, maintaining a respectful distance. "I wanted to check on you," he said. "Today can't have been easy." "It wasn't," she admitted. "But it was necessary." She gestured to the small sitting area by the window. "Please sit." He joined her, his large frame making the hotel furniture seem delicate by comparison. In the lamplight, Olivia could see the fatigue in his face, the strain of the past days etched in new lines around his eyes. "Holden is a good man," Vaughn said. "If anyone can bring Blackburn to justice, it's him." "But you're worried," she observed. "I can see it in your eyes." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't like that Blackburn has disappeared. It suggests he's planning something, not just running. What can he do now? The law is involved. There are witnesses, documentation. A desperate man can do terrible things, Olivia." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "Which is why I think you should leave Flagstaff." "Leave?" But Marshal Holden said to stay under federal protection. "Holden has limited resources, just himself and 2 deputies to cover the entire Northern Territory, and Blackburn has money, influence." His voice dropped lower. "I have a friend in California, a former ranger who runs a ranch near Sacramento. You could stay there safe until this is resolved. Olivia studied his face, reading the genuine concern there. And you, would you come with me? A shadow crossed his features. I can't. Not yet. I need to stay, help Holden find Blackburn, make sure he faces justice. He took her hand, his touch gentle despite the calluses that spoke of years of hard work. But once it's done, once you're truly free, I could join you, if that's what you want. The implication of his words hung in the air between them. A future together, beyond the immediate crisis. A possibility that made Olivia's heart race despite the uncertainty surrounding them. I won't run again, she said firmly. I've been running since the day I left Edgar's ranch. It's time I stood my ground. Her fingers tightened around his. And I don't want to be separated from you, Vaughn. Not now. The look he gave her was complex pride mingled with concern, affection with fear for her safety. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, he said, but there was warmth in his voice. I prefer determined, she replied with a small smile. He chuckled, the sound rumbling deep in his chest. Determined, then. His expression grew serious again. Just promise me you'll be careful. Don't go anywhere alone, even within the hotel. I promise. She hesitated, then added softly, what happens after this is over, Vaughn? When Edgar is arrested and I'm legally free? He was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. What do you want to happen? I want to live without fear, she said simply. I want to build a new life. She met his eyes directly. And I want you to be part of it. The naked honesty in her voice seemed to affect him deeply. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Then that's what we'll work toward, he said. One step at a time. It wasn't quite a declaration of love, but it was a promise of something equally important, a commitment to a shared future, whatever form it might take. For Olivia, who had learned the hard way that words could be manipulated and twisted, Vaughn's steady presence and quiet determination were worth more than grand proclamations. As he left her room a short time later, she felt a curious peace settle over her. Whatever dangers still awaited, she would face them with courage, not just for herself, but for the life she hoped to build with the man who had pulled her from a river and promised she would never be caught again. The next 3 days passed in tense waiting. Marshal Holden's deputies searched Flagstaff and the surrounding area, but found no trace of Edgar Blackburn. The men who had been watching the hotel had also disappeared, suggesting they had either given up or, more likely, regrouped to plan another approach. Olivia remained in the hotel, venturing out only for meals in the dining room, always accompanied by either Vaughn or Deputy Barnes. The forced inactivity chafed at her, but she understood the necessity. On the morning of the 4th day, Marshal Holden called them to his room for a meeting. His expression was grimmer than usual, his manner tense. I received this an hour ago, he said, handing Vaughn a telegram. It's from the sheriff in Winslow. Vaughn read it quickly, his face hardening. When did this happen? 2 nights ago, according to the report, Holden replied. What is it? Olivia asked, anxiety rising in her throat. Vaughn handed her the telegram. It was brief and to the point. Ranch belonging to Vaughn Langston burned to ground. Stop. No casualties reported. Stop. Evidence suggests arson. Stop. My ranch, Vaughn said, his voice flat. Blackburn had it destroyed. Olivia felt sick. The small home where she had found safety, where she and Vaughn had grown close, reduced to ashes out of Edgar's spite. I'm so sorry, she whispered, reaching for Vaughn's hand. This is my fault. No, he said firmly, clasping her fingers. This is Blackburn's doing, not yours. Never think otherwise. Marshal Holden cleared his throat. There's more. The sheriff in Winslow reports that Blackburn himself was seen in town yesterday making inquiries about both of you. He's getting bolder, Vaughn observed, or more desperate. Either way, it suggests he's planning something. Holden stroked his mustache thoughtfully. I think it's time we changed our strategy. Waiting for him to make a move is proving too dangerous. What do you suggest? Vaughn asked. We draw him out, the marshal said simply. Make him come to us, on our terms, where we can be prepared. The plan Holden proposed was risky but potentially effective. They would spread word that Olivia was returning to Winslow to collect personal belongings from Vaughn's ranch. The news would certainly reach Edgar, who would likely see it as an opportunity to recapture her. But the ranch is destroyed, Olivia pointed out. Blackburn doesn't know we know that, Holden explained. As far as he's concerned, you're walking into a perfect trap. Only the trap will be ours, not his. Vaughn looked troubled. You're suggesting using Olivia as bait. Not exactly, the marshal countered. Mrs. Wilson will appear to be traveling to Winslow, but she'll actually remain here under guard. Meanwhile, myself and a team of deputies will be waiting at what's left of your ranch to arrest Blackburn when he appears. And if he sends his men instead of coming himself? Vaughn asked. Then we arrest them for attempted kidnapping and use their testimony to find Blackburn, Holden replied. Either way, we end this. The discussion continued, refining the details of the plan. Olivia would be seen publicly preparing to leave Flagstaff, even boarding the stage to Winslow. But she would exit at the first stop outside of town, where Deputy Barnes would be waiting to escort her back to Flagstaff by a different route. Meanwhile, Vaughn would ride ahead to Winslow with Marshal Holden and 3 other deputies, establishing a perimeter around the burned ranch. If all went according to plan, Edgar would arrive expecting to find Olivia vulnerable, only to face federal lawmen instead. It's too dangerous, Olivia protested when she fully understood what Vaughn would be doing. What if Edgar brings all his men? You could be outnumbered. We'll have the element of surprise, Holden assured her. And I'm telegraphing for additional deputies from Prescott to meet us there. Still, as the details were finalized, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled over her. The plan required Vaughn to put himself directly in harm's way facing the man who had already demonstrated his willingness to destroy property and lives to get what he wanted. That evening, their last before the plan was to be put into motion, Olivia and Vaughn had dinner together in the hotel dining room. Both were quiet, the weight of tomorrow's risks hanging between them. I wish there was another way, Olivia said as they finished their meal. So do I, Vaughn admitted. But Holden's right, we can't just wait for Blackburn to strike again. Next time could be worse than a burned building. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Promise me you'll be careful. Edgar is. He's capable of terrible things when he's angry. I know. His fingers tightened around hers. But so am I when someone threatens what I care about. The simple declaration warmed her despite her fears. As they walked back to their rooms, Vaughn's hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a protective gesture that had become familiar and comforting. At her door, they paused. Deputy Barnes was stationed at the far end of the hall, giving them a semblance of privacy. I'll be leaving before dawn, Vaughn said quietly. Won't have a chance to see you before you board the stage. Then this is goodbye for now, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. Just for a few days. Once this is over, once Blackburn is in custody. He hesitated, seeming to search for the right words. What will you do about your ranch? Olivia asked. Will you rebuild? I don't know. His expression grew thoughtful. It was just a place. What matters is what comes next. And what does come next, Vaughn? She pressed gently. The question had been circling between them for days, growing more urgent as the danger approached its climax. Instead of answering with words, he drew her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that spoke of everything they hadn't yet said aloud. Unlike their first kiss, which had been tentative despite its passion, this one held a certainty that took Olivia's breath away. It was a promise, an assurance that whatever happened tomorrow, their paths were irrevocably joined. When they finally broke apart, Vaughn rested his forehead against hers. "Come back to me," he whispered. "That's all I ask." "Always," she promised, her voice equally soft. "Be safe, Vaughn. And when this is over, we'll decide our next steps together." Morning came too quickly. Olivia dressed carefully in her yellow dress, now somewhat worn from constant use, but still the only clothing she could truly call her own. Deputy Barnes escorted her to the stage office, where she made a show of purchasing a ticket to Winslow, speaking loudly enough to be overheard by the other waiting passengers. As the stage pulled away from Flagstaff, Olivia peered through the window, searching for any sign that they were being followed. The other passengers, an elderly couple and a traveling salesman, paid her little attention as the coach rattled along the rough road. At the first relay station, about 10 miles outside of town, Deputy Barnes was waiting as planned. Olivia explained to the driver that she had changed her mind and would be returning to Flagstaff. If he found this odd, he made no comment, merely helping her down from the coach before continuing the journey to Winslow with the remaining passengers. "Any problems, madam?" Barnes asked as he helped her onto a horse he had brought. "None," she replied. "Do you think anyone followed the stage?" "Marshall's got a man watching the road. If anyone suspicious was trailing you, we'll know." They took a roundabout route back to Flagstaff, avoiding the main road. By noon, they were back in town, slipping in via the same back alleys Olivia and Vaughn had used days earlier. At the hotel, she was installed in a different room, this one at the rear of the building with a view of the stables rather than the street. "Marshall's orders," Barnes explained. "Less conspicuous. I'll be outside your door at all times." The waiting was excruciating. Olivia paced the small room, imagining what might be happening in Winslow. Had Edgar taken the bait? Was Vaughn in danger even now? The questions circled endlessly in her mind, feeding her anxiety until she felt she might scream from the tension. Late that afternoon, a knock at her door startled her from her worried reverie. It was Deputy Barnes. "Telegram for you, Mrs. Wilson," he said, handing her a folded paper. "Just arrived for the marshal. He left instructions for any messages to be shared with you immediately." With trembling fingers, Olivia unfolded the telegram. It was from Marshal Holden. "Plan proceeding stop. Blackburn sighted near Winslow. Stop all in position. Stop will update when resolved. Stop." "Thank you," she said, clutching the paper tightly. It wasn't much information, but at least it confirmed that things were moving forward. Edgar had taken the bait, just as they'd hoped. Night fell, bringing no further news. Olivia tried to sleep, but found herself staring at the ceiling, her mind conjuring increasingly terrible scenarios. What if Edgar had somehow discovered the trap? What if Vaughn was hurt or worse? Just before dawn, another knock roused her from the half-sleep she had finally fallen into. She opened the door to find Deputy Barnes looking grave. "Another telegram, madam," he said, handing it to her. This one was shorter. "Shots fired. Stop Blackburn escaped. Stop Langston wounded. Stop returning to Flagstaff today. Stop." The words seemed to swim before her eyes. Vaughn wounded. How badly? Was he alive? The telegram's brevity left too many questions unanswered, too many fears unaddressed. "When will they arrive?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "Late afternoon, most likely," Barnes replied. "They'll bring Mr. Langston to the doctor here in town." The day stretched interminably. Olivia couldn't eat, couldn't rest, could barely think beyond the terror that Vaughn might be seriously hurt or worse. By mid-afternoon, she had convinced Deputy Barnes to escort her to Dr. Madison's office to wait for their arrival. The doctor was kind but could offer little comfort without knowing the nature of Vaughn's wounds. "We'll be prepared for whatever comes," he assured her, showing her the examination room he had readied. Finally, as the sun was beginning to set, the sound of approaching horses drew Olivia to the window. Marshal Holden was leading the group, his expression grim. Behind him rode two deputies. Supporting between them a third rider, Vaughn slumped forward in the saddle, his shirt dark with what could only be blood. Olivia rushed outside as they reached the doctor's office. "Vaughn!" she cried, running to his horse. His head lifted at the sound of her voice, and despite the pain evident in his features, relief washed over his face. "Olivia," he murmured, "you're safe." "Of course I'm safe," she said, tears blurring her vision as the deputies carefully helped him down from the saddle. "It's you I'm worried about." Dr. Madison took charge, directing the deputies to bring Vaughn inside. "Gunshot wound?" he asked Marshal Holden. "Yes, left side, below the ribs. Bullet went clean through, but he's lost a lot of blood." The doctor nodded grimly. "Let's get him on the table, Mrs. Wilson. Perhaps you should wait outside." "No," Vaughn said weakly but firmly. "Let her stay, please." The doctor hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, but stay out of the way." For the next hour, Olivia watched as Dr. Madison cleaned and treated Vaughn's wound. The bullet had indeed passed through his body, missing vital organs but causing significant blood loss. The doctor administered morphine for the pain, cleaned the wound thoroughly, and applied stitches to both the entry and exit wounds before bandaging them tightly. "He'll need complete rest for at least a week," Dr. Madison told Olivia and Marshal Holden when he had finished. "The risk now is infection. I've done what I can to prevent it, but he'll need careful monitoring." "He can stay at the hotel," Holden decided. "I'll arrange for a ground floor room." Easier than carrying him up the stairs. While the deputies carefully transported Vaughn to the hotel, Olivia finally had a chance to speak with Marshal Holden about what had happened. "Blackburn showed up just as we expected," the marshal explained grimly. "But he was cautious, sent 2 men ahead to scout the property. When they didn't return, we'd captured them. Without a shot fired, he approached himself with 4 more men." "What went wrong?" Olivia asked. "One of his men spotted one of my deputies. All hell broke loose." Holden's expression darkened. "Vaughn was trying to reach Blackburn when he was hit. The confusion allowed Blackburn to escape, though not without injury. One of my deputies winged him in the arm." "So he's still out there," Olivia said, her heart sinking. "For now." "But he's wounded. 3 of his men are in custody, and he knows we have federal charges against him. He can't go home, can't show his face in any town where he's known." The marshal's expression was determined. "We'll find him. It's just a matter of time." At the hotel, Olivia insisted on staying by Vaughn's side. The morphine had made him drowsy, but he was conscious, his blue eyes following her movements as she helped him settle into the bed. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured. "Blackburn's still free." "Let him come," she said with fierce determination. "I'm not leaving you, Vaughn, not now, not ever." A small smile touched his pale lips. "Stubborn woman." "Determined," she corrected, gently smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Now rest, doctor's orders." He caught her hand, his grip weak but insistent. "Olivia, there's something I need to say." "It can wait until you're stronger," she tried to reassure him. "No." His eyes held hers, suddenly clear despite the medication. "It's waited too long already." He drew a careful breath. "I love you. Have for days now. Should have said it sooner." The simple declaration, spoken with such honest directness, brought tears to Olivia's eyes. She leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "I love you too," she whispered. "Now rest, please." We have all the time in the world for such conversations once you're healed. He nodded, his eyes already beginning to close as the morphine pulled him toward sleep. Promise you'll be careful, he murmured. Blackburn's desperate now, dangerous. I promise, she said, though in truth, her concerns were all for Vaughn, not herself. Edgar no longer held the power to terrify her, not now, not with Vaughn and the law on her side. As night fell, Marshal Holden insisted on posting a deputy outside Vaughn's room despite Olivia's assurances that she would not leave his side. Blackburn's unpredictable, the marshal said firmly. Until he's in custody, we take no chances. Olivia kept vigil through the night, dozing occasionally in a chair beside Vaughn's bed but waking at his slightest movement. By morning, his color was better, and the doctor pronounced himself cautiously optimistic after changing the bandages. The wounds are clean, no sign of infection yet, he told Olivia. Keep him still, make sure he drinks plenty of fluids, and call me immediately if there's any change. For 3 days, Olivia rarely left Vaughn's side. She helped him eat, changed his bandages under Dr. Madison's supervision, and read to him from books borrowed from the hotel's small library. Gradually, his strength began to return, though he remained weak and in pain despite the medication. On the evening of the 3rd day, as Olivia was helping Vaughn sit up to eat his dinner, a commotion in the street outside drew her attention. Shouts and the sound of running feet prompted her to move to the window, pulling aside the curtain cautiously. People were gathering in front of the sheriff's office across the street, their expressions animated. A moment later, Marshal Holden emerged, followed by 2 deputies escorting a man in handcuffs. Even from a distance, Olivia recognized him instantly: Edgar Blackburn. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his right arm bandaged, his face bearing several days' growth of beard. But it was undoubtedly him, and he was in custody. Vaughn, she gasped, turning from the window. They've arrested Edgar. Despite his weakness, Vaughn struggled to sit up straighter. Are you certain it's him? Positive. She returned to the window, watching as the small procession moved toward the jail. Marshal Holden has him in handcuffs. A knock at the door interrupted them. Deputy Barnes entered, his expression triumphant. Marshal sent me to tell you we got him. Blackburn surrendered at a cabin about 20 miles north of here. Local rancher recognized him from the wanted posters and alerted us. Is he talking? Vaughn asked, wincing as he shifted position. Not yet, but with 3 of his men already confessing to following his orders and Mrs. Wilson's testimony, he doesn't stand much chance. Barnes smiled at Olivia. Marshal says to tell you it's over. You're safe now. After the deputy left, Olivia sat on the edge of Vaughn's bed, emotions overwhelming her. Relief, disbelief, a strange sense of anticlimax, they all swirled together, leaving her momentarily speechless. It's really over, she whispered finally. He can't hurt me anymore. Vaughn took her hand, squeezing it gently. You're free, he said simply. The word resonated within her. Free, not just from Edgar's physical control, but free to make her own choices, to build a new life. Free to love and be loved without fear. What happens now? She asked, echoing the question they had asked each other so many times. Vaughn's eyes, blue and clear in the lamplight, held her steadily. Whatever we want to happen, he said. The future is ours to decide. Our ranch is gone, she reminded him, purposefully using the word our rather than your. We can rebuild, he said, or start fresh somewhere else. California, perhaps, like I mentioned, or stay here in Arizona. His thumb traced circles on her palm. What matters is that we're together. Olivia leaned forward, careful not to press against his wound, and kissed him softly. Together, she agreed. That's all that matters now. In the weeks that followed, life took on a new rhythm. Edgar Blackburn was formally charged with multiple felonies, including assault, kidnapping, arson, and attempted murder. With overwhelming evidence against him, including testimony from his own men, he was held without bail pending trial. Vaughn recovered slowly but steadily. As soon as he was well enough to travel, Marshal Holden suggested they might want to leave Flagstaff temporarily. "The trial won't begin for at least 2 months," he explained. "And while Blackburn is secure in jail, he still has friends who might cause trouble. Might be wise to put some distance between yourselves and this situation until court convenes." They decided to take his advice. With the proceeds from selling his remaining livestock, Vaughn purchased a small wagon and provisions for travel. Their destination was California specifically. His friends ranched near Sacramento, where they could stay until returning for the trial. The night before their departure, Vaughn took Olivia to dinner at Flagstaff's finest restaurant, a celebration of sorts, though what precisely they were celebrating remained unspoken between them. As they finished their meal, Vaughn reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet pouch. "I have something for you," he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. Olivia watched curiously as he emptied the contents into his palm, a simple gold band set with a small sapphire. "It's not much," he said, suddenly self-conscious, "but I wanted you to have something that was just from me. Something that represents a new beginning." "Vaughn," she whispered, understanding dawning, "is this a proposal?" He smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Yes, if you'll have me. I know your divorce isn't finalized yet. No, we haven't known each other long. But I love you, Olivia Wilson, and if you're willing to wait until you're legally free, I'd be honored to make you my wife." Tears blurred her vision as she reached across the table, offering her hand. "Yes," she said simply. "Nothing would make me happier." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It wasn't an engagement ring in the traditional sense. She was, after all, still technically married. But it was a promise ring, a symbol of their commitment to a shared future once her past was legally resolved. The journey to California took 2 weeks, following a route that carried them through breathtaking landscapes, red rock formations, vast deserts, and finally the towering Sierra Nevada mountains. They traveled slowly, mindful of Vaughn's still healing wound, camping each night beneath the stars. It was during these nights, sitting by their campfire with the vast sky overhead, that they truly began to plan their future. Vaughn spoke of land he had seen near the coast, fertile soil, mild climate, perfect for raising horses and perhaps starting a family. Olivia shared her dream of opening a school, teaching children whose opportunities might otherwise be limited. "We could do both," Vaughn suggested. "Find land with enough space for horses and a schoolhouse." The ease with which they blended their individual dreams into a shared vision spoke volumes about the strength of their connection. Despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting and the danger that had surrounded their early relationship, they had found in each other true partners. Marshal Holden's telegram reached them shortly after they arrived at the ranch of Vaughn's friend, James Sullivan. The news was better than they could have hoped. Edgar Blackburn, facing overwhelming evidence and the certainty of a lengthy prison sentence, had agreed to a plea arrangement. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he had confessed to all charges and signed papers agreeing to an immediate divorce. "You're free," Vaughn said, reading the telegram aloud. "Truly free." Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders, one she hadn't even realized she was still carrying. "When do we need to return for the formal proceedings?" "We don't," he said, still reading. "Holden says the judge has accepted the signed papers. The divorce is granted, effective immediately." He looked up, eyes bright with emotion. "It's done, Olivia. The past is behind you now." That night, under a canopy of stars, Vaughn officially proposed, this time with nothing standing between them and their future together. The ceremony took place 2 weeks later, a simple affair in the garden of the Sullivan Ranch. Olivia wore a new dress of pale blue silk, her auburn hair adorned with wildflowers. Vaughn, fully recovered from his wound, stood tall and proud in a new suit, his blue eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. As summer turned to fall, they made a decision. Rather than returning to Arizona, they would build their new life in California. They found land just as Vaughn had described, 20 acres near Monterey, with rolling hills, a stream running through the property, and views of the distant Pacific Ocean. Construction began immediately on both a house and a small schoolhouse. By winter, the main house was complete enough to move in, though many finishing touches remained. Olivia hung curtains at windows still lacking proper glass, arranged furniture in rooms with partially finished floors, and transformed the rough structure into a home through sheer determination and creativity. The schoolhouse opened the following spring, with 6 students to start children from neighboring ranches and farms who had previously had little access to education. Olivia taught reading, writing, mathematics, and history, her natural gift for teaching quickly earning the respect and affection of both her students and their parents. Meanwhile, Vaughn began building their horse breeding operation, starting with 2 quality mares and a stallion purchased from his friend Sullivan. His skill with horses and his fair business practices soon earned him a reputation throughout the region, bringing clients from as far away as San Francisco. Their first child, a boy they named Thomas after Olivia's father, was born exactly 1 year after their wedding. He had Vaughn's blue eyes and Olivia's auburn hair, a perfect blend of them both. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, Sarah, named for Vaughn's mother. On a warm evening 5 years after their escape from Arizona, Olivia stood on the porch of their completed home, watching as Vaughn taught young Thomas to brush one of the yearling colts. Sarah played nearby, carefully arranging rocks in patterns that made sense only to her 3-year-old mind. The schoolhouse was visible in the distance, where now 15 students came daily for lessons. As the setting sun bathed everything in golden light, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. The river that had nearly claimed her life had instead carried her toward salvation, toward Vaughn, toward freedom, toward a life filled with love and purpose. Vaughn looked up, catching her gaze across the yard. Even after 5 years, the connection between them remained electric, immediate. He smiled, that rare, transformative smile that still made her heart race, and she smiled back, remembering his promise from what felt like a lifetime ago. "You'll never be caught again." He had kept that promise. Instead of captivity, he had offered her choice. Instead of fear, he had given her safety. And together, they had built something neither of them could have created alone: a family, a home, a future unburdened by the shadows of the past. As Thomas ran toward her, eager to share some discovery, and Vaughn followed with Sarah now perched on his shoulders, Olivia opened her arms to embrace her family. The river of life had carried her through dangerous rapids to reach this peaceful shore, and she wouldn't have changed a single moment of the journey.